nice apartment. This apartment really is very nice. The building is new. They just built it. It was actually the headquarters of some kind of biotechnology business for a while. I can't remember which one it is. And then it was just they decided that business sold the property, and I think they tore down whatever was here, and they built this entire apartment building. So no one's even lived in this apartment before. So really, it worked out. It is really a really nice place, actually. It's 2 years being homeless. This is a television I need to kind of get rid of. I got this television from the Homeless Coalition when I got my last apartment, and so it's been in storage for a couple of years. Yeah, so this is my place. I don't know. I mean, I've talked about it before. I think there was a couple of videos. There was a couple of videos. Yeah, there was a couple of videos. That's fine. That's grammatically correct. Yeah, so it's a studio. It is definitely a livable size for one person. Why am I talking about my apartment? And my apartment's not really what I meant to be talking about. I guess I have something of a hope that people will stop calling me crazy quite so often when they know that I actually have a place to live in and no longer homeless. Although, of course, being homeless just means you don't have the money to have a place to live. It doesn't mean that you are crazy. It just means you don't have any money. And I actually would never be able to afford this place by myself. Having a Section 8 voucher really, really helps. And it was getting pretty worrisome, actually, because I just had to ask for extension after extension. I could not get someone to rent to me. Being evicted really is bad if you're trying to find another place to live. The stuff that's online about me, also very difficult. I mean, people just did not, and having a Section 8 voucher, I have to say, there are a lot of landlords who do discriminate, although most of them are not going to say so in so many words. Realtors who also do the same thing. You're not, in the state of Massachusetts, you're not supposed to, you really are not allowed to say, we don't take Section 8. But people find ways around that. And some people actually will say, so I had a few situations in which people actually said, I don't want to take Section 8 voucher. And then it was not good. But anyway, I was thinking about something because, I've said before, I think that when people get very, very stressed out, their strengths get taxed, and then their weaknesses kind of get worse. That's the thing, and I think that's unfortunate because it's kind of like anything else. Like in nature, if something gets hurt once, it's more likely to get hurt again, and that just because it gets to be vulnerable. That's just the way it is, right? And that, of course, goes against the human idea of fairness, which is that if something really bad happens to you, that should really be you shouldn't have more bad things happen to you, except that it's usually the way that it actually works, right? You have one bad thing happen to you, it makes things more difficult, you get more stressed out, maybe you make more mistakes, or whatever it is, right? So it kind of tends to be the way that things work. And I think one of my problems, if I'm going to talk about a personality problem or a psychological problem, I suppose, I think it's more of a personality problem because it's just something that happens, is that I can be pretty mean. I can be pretty mean. I mean, it's not, it's the kind of thing that you can have for years and kind of be off and on here and there for years. It's not going to necessarily ruin your life, but it will strain your relationships, right? And of course, the more stressed out I get, the more likely I am to be mean. The more likely I am to be alone, the more stressed out I get. So it's kind of like that, except that I think there's sometimes there's a particular aspect to it, which is that sometimes that side of me gets triggered when people are being nice to me. Every once in a while that happens to me. And it's funny because I've noticed it. I've noticed it in myself sometimes over the years that somebody will try to be nice to me. It doesn't. I'm pretty good. I think I'm pretty good about recognizing when people really are making an effort. There are people, that I know are consistently decent people. I don't tend to be real abusive towards those people, emotionally abusive, that kind of thing. But every once in a while, I just somehow that side of my personality kind of takes over, and I kind of know where it's from. My family had a lot of trauma. I think my family's particular trauma had to do with very unpredictable events. That's the thing. I mean, I think that that's the kind of thing that can cause people to kind of be be very defensive in a way that's not really logical sometimes, is if you have some kind of history of trauma that is the type of trauma that's based on something that's very unpredictable. That's the thing. I mean, I think, overall, I think that was kind of what my family learned to count on, was that you could never really count on anything, and and something really bad was just about to happen to you, and that people, even if they seem really nice, often really aren't. I mean, I think that was a very particular type of problem for my parents, until they got to be really kind of suspicious, even of their own kids. Certainly I've talked about the rupture in my relationship with my parents. I mean, there's certainly not people that I'm ever planning to talk to ever again in my life, ever. And whether or not that was what had to happen in the course of our lives, I'm not sure. I think it kind of could have gone either way when I was younger, but I think what happened to me, and what has happened to a lot of people, and has gotten even worse since that, is that psychology, the practice of psychology and the practice of psychiatry, has really veered away from being about trying to find out what the underlying issues are. I mean, insurance doesn't even want to pay for it. Insurance does not want to pay for counseling anymore. Almost everything is diagnosis based. Almost everything is medication based. And so if you have someone who is struggling with some issues, especially family issues, you take them to counseling, and you are more likely than not going to get diagnosed with something. And the message of that, no matter what else the counselor is, no matter what else the counselor says to you, the message of that is, it's not them, it's you. So then you don't necessarily identify what the issues are. You don't learn, you don't try to step by step try to work your way out of them. You don't really, those problems just kind of get ingrained, even if they're the things about your family that you dislike the most, and you never wanted to be that way. You end up being that way because those issues just get buried under the idea of there just being something inherently wrong with you. Plus, I think the medication, a lot of it, just tends to really mask your feelings, or give you new feelings that are not appropriate to your situation. There's stuff online. There is another viewpoint about medication besides what the pharmaceutical industry wants people to think, right? So in some ways, I've been able, over time, to figure out what were the things that were counterproductive about my family. Sometimes I've been able to just kind of take them out of my personality, and sometimes not. I've noticed something that's pretty enduring about me, is that sometimes that side of my personality just takes over, and I couldn't say a nice thing if you paid me. I spent an entire day saying hateful things, because I just, for whatever reason, that side takes over when I'm like, and I think that people who have some kind of, my family really did have a lot of trauma. They really did. And I think it tended to display itself in lots and lots and lots of verbal disagreements, and just kind of an inability to have things be all right. I think they just, sometimes my family, the most charming people you ever met in your life, gracious, gentle, kind, understanding, great listeners, but when they are not that way, they are everything that is not that way, right? And so that's actually pretty frightening too, because you meet people. I mean, I think they're fabulous to their friends, they adore their friends, but I think sometimes the family relationships were just kind of too much for them to deal with, because they had all this trauma of just these very serious trust issues, about people. I think people in general. So sometimes I am that way, and you wouldn't necessarily know that. You wouldn't necessarily really know that until you had gotten to know me, for a long time, and if I had talked about it. But I think those types of things in people's personalities that are a little bit off, I think it tends to be idiosyncratic. I do, and I think that sometimes that's the thing that can make it the most difficult to understand, to recognize about